Right, well, tonight in the Finance Committee meeting, we would like to discuss two things. One is the proposed amendments to the Articles of Agreement, and that's part of it's attachment 3 in your packet, and the proposed budget. And the two tie together because the proposed amendments will affect how we fund our budget via the sending school contributions. So this is attachment 3 in your packet. I'm sorry? Sorry, what? You found it? So I guess let's go over attachment 3 and then talk about the budget, if that's okay. So the first proposed amendment is relative to the fund balance. And all the typing in black is what we currently have. The red words are the proposed amendments. So I do believe that was somewhat agreed upon. We just need to make sure that our unencumbered fund balance is capped at 8%, but that allows us to encumber other funds for future expenditures. This one doesn't really directly, it sort of does, but not directly affects the budget.
So do you have a proposal or an outline for encumbered reserves? You can't.
Oh, I will, but I don't tonight.
Not tonight, but at some point,
sure.
Capital reserves,
absolutely.
Rainy day funds.
Absolutely.
What's a new tractor?
That's the biggest fund, yes. Yeah.
An outline, then we all know what our operating boundaries are.
Absolutely. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, then number 2 is the one that caused some confusion. So we have an existing formula using the ADM 5-year average, and when we apply that formula to what our funding needs are in the budget, we come up with, our 3 schools fall in a certain order. We have 1, 2, and 3. The, quote, gentleman's agreement that's existed almost since the first year of Act 1, and it's just an informal agreement among this board. We never changed the Articles of Agreement. But the informal agreement was that no sending school's increase from year to year would exceed the Act 1 index for that year. So we've been employing that, and what happens is when we apply the formula and then artificially bring down the highest cost school to Act 1, then the other 2 fall equally far. And in some cases, there's been decreases. So for the last 3 years, our total sending school contribution has been less than the year before. And we're looking at that same situation this year as well. So there's a couple things going on here. The first proposed addition would codify the gentleman's agreement that's existed by putting it into the Articles of Agreement, so capping the increases at Act 1. And then the second possible addition is imposing a floor so that no sending school has a decrease, even if the formula breaks out so that, for example, Pennridge would have a decrease. You wouldn't get that decrease. You would pay the same amount you paid the prior year. So it's A, do you want to do that at all? B, do you want to codify it in your Articles of Agreement, or you want to just keep having an informal agreement and revisit it every year?
If we started this though, what year would be the floor?
This year.
2017-18.
Correct, yeah.
So this floor in here would have a different floor.
Well, I have 2 revenue alternatives in the budget, in the proposed budget, and one of them is using the cap. And the second alternative is using the floor and the cap.
Oh, okay.
So I'm assuming, because I've already told the sending schools their worst case scenario would be Act 1. So And that's because that's what, the board voted on doing this already in December, but then we've been confused, so we've retracted it. But, they need a number early on. So if I give them a worst case scenario and then it comes out to be something less, that's okay. But I'd say, at minimum, you're gonna have to allow the informal agreement to continue cap-wise for at least another year, even if you don't want to codify it or take any other action. The floor is a brand new thing, so.
Do you see the floor, from your perspective, do you foresee the floor resulting in a surplus that kind of wouldn't be expected?
Yeah, I guess, it's difficult to be linear about this, so let's just turn to the revenues.
Yeah.
If you look on page, excuse me, page 5 versus page 7, okay, so we have alternatives 1 and 2.
Okay.
Alternative 1 is the way we've been doing it with a cap. So if you look somewhere in the middle of those line items, we have the sending schools operating support line items, okay? So Quakertown is capped at 2.5%. Palisades and Pennridge are both looking at a decrease. And the use of fund balance, which is about 2/3 of the way down in the shaded column, is 1.194 million. If you look on page 7, imposing a floor, Quakertown's still paying 2.5%. The other two schools are at 0 because they're paying even to what they're paying this year. And the fund balance usage is 1.03 million. So we're definitely saving, and that's just gonna get better and better as time goes on. There's some concern. I mean, although we have a healthy fund balance, we do budget a significant portion of it every year. We budget it because we have to budget for the worst case scenario, and then we try really, really hard all year not to actually spend all the money we budgeted. And so far that's been working, but last year our margin was only $50,000. Margin being revenues less expenses, without dipping into that fund balance. Now we're down to 50. So, it's getting closer every year. So eventually we're gonna start going into fund balance and then using it, and then we won't have it. So if we had to actually, if we did not budget any fund balance, I did run that. And so if we had 0 fund balance in the revenues, Quakertown would be at 22%, Pennridge at 12%, and Palisades at 16%. I ran it at $500,000 in fund balance usage, and Quakertown's at 14%, Pennridge at 5%, and Palisades at 8%. So if the day ever comes that we run out of fund balance, and it's not going to be tomorrow, but I don't know what the year is, but let's say within 10 years, sending schools are going to have an enormous increase, or something dramatic's going to have to happen. So,
But adding the floor should cushion that a little bit.
Yeah, I see the floor is not a good idea at all. I think it's 100
So you have to agree to impose a floor, and then you have to decide if you wish to put it in your articles of agreement or just have it as an informal agreement to talk about every year.
My preference would be the informal or gentleman's agreement, because it's gonna be tough to get the articles changed. There's gonna be some opposition. Because looking down the road, Palisades is still really big.
Change it, we have to change it.
Yeah.
Down the road.
I mean, we're still selling
We redid one.
as many as we have. So, 9 kids, is what it looks like. So, I mean, that's pretty much, we're more than we were 5 years ago. So, we're the same as we've been for the next 3 years. But, that's 5 years ago, it was only 600 per kid. unless anything changes in your car. Yeah. Personally, I can't see that. I can't see a bigger pool of students, something like that. That's just. That's maybe about 600. That's on 10,000.
Right. It's 10, 11, 12.
Those are 450. Not to say I don't want to come over. Yeah, sure, no, yeah. Expect you know, right, that's just.
So you agree with trying it for a year, but you wish to keep it informal and revisit it? Is that what I'm hearing?
Maybe.
No, I would agree with that. I mean, let's take a look and see how it goes. Be quiet. For a year. If it changes or if we want to, we'll circle back and change it. The only thing that really concerns me about the first statement is, what if disaster strikes? This is section, second bullet, prorating operating capital expenses. What if disaster strikes? And we really have an expense that comes by the articles of agreement. Now we're handcuffed where the Act 1. And we may need more than that for this special circumstance. And that's going to happen no matter what, but I would be in favor of just having the elements for
I think our safety valve here is that uncommitted and unrestricted. That's our safety valve.
So, in terms, if you recall, we had audit recommendations 2 years in a row about changing the first language. Is everyone on board with doing that? Actually changing those articles of agreement for that purpose? Yes, okay. But the second half, we're not going to change it, we're just going to do it informally.
Addition B, to be clear, addition B or not?
A and B, number 2 entirely, both of those and number 2 will not be changed in the articles of agreement. That's what these folks are saying anyway.
So we have another gentleman's agreement?
So I will come to the board every October or so and say, how are we gonna proceed with the budget this coming year? Because I will have to tell the sending schools, and I generally tell them October, November. And then we know how we're gonna build our budget, and then I can give them a number, you know, a cap and a floor, and then the budget will be what it will be.
And the kind of, the gentleman's agreement is, did I hear you say that you wanted to see how this works before we put it in stone? Oh, Chuck said.
And I agree with that.
Do you agree with that? You've got the history.
Well, of course, my history goes back to when we didn't have a fund balance here, and the districts had to pay.
A full load, yeah.
Yeah. So if you got a big deal, you really hammered it. Before the fund balance, if the games had gone the way they were now, every house, they had a big chunk.
I
Which is
said
what happened.
22%, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we would just have to cut programs and find ways to bring the expenditures down, because I'm sure they're not gonna pay 22% increase.
If you stuck it in.
Right.
Well, okay, so if we do this for 2 years, and when do we decide to put it into writing? Or don't we have
I have the opinion that the works, without it being in the articles, I would leave it alone, but.
I mean, right now, are we agreed that what we're doing is working, right?
which,
It's been almost 10 years.
And-
It's working.
So we've got a 10-year track record, what we're doing seems to be working. I mean, obviously, we want to monitor it and adjust every year if you give us that opportunity.
The auditor doesn't have a problem with it?
Okay,
He's pretty tough.
we're going with the second option on this. We're changing it to a floor, correct? Or is Chuck saying, what we're doing?
What we're trying to nail down right now is if, A, do you agree with the theory of putting a floor, and B, do you want it actually codified in the articles? And these folks do not want to codify it, but they would like a floor. I
Okay,
think that's right.
is that what you're saying, too, Chuck? Because then I just heard you say we were successful for 10 years.
Well, with the first one, we've been doing the cap.
Correct.
We've been doing that for a long time.
Right,
But that's also informal.
right. But I just heard Chuck say that was successful, so I didn't think he wanted to see a change, but you're agreeing with a change.
One section, on the first section. That's just, that's clarification.
He's agreeing, number one, he's agreeing to put into the, like, you're literally gonna change the articles of agreement using the language for number one.
Okay.
But number two, none of those things are gonna go into the articles, they're just gonna be informal.
But this is what we're going to abide by, this is what we're going to do.
Informally.
But yeah, in practice, that's what we're.
Okay, thank
Which is
you.
what we
I was
did.
getting confused by how you were presenting.
I'm easily confused.
It's very confusing. It's just very confusing situation.
It's not broke, it's not fixed.
And it could happen that, Pennridge sends a slug of kids in and things even out, and you know, break it down, doesn't have to pay percentage, you know.
You know what, in a way.
If the student enrollment would even out.
Our students are here. And, we should no bill of office, but, we have to pay 50, 60 students.
Okay, so when you vote on the articles, it's only gonna be number one.
We have a motion.
And the rest of it. So to change the articles, we've got to get it out to all the sending districts, and every sending district has to vote on it. And then it has to be a majority of each sending district. Support that.
So,
Do you have to motion to update the school name in the articles? Would that be okay to update that?
We're supposed to have council.
Because the articles of agreement refer to us as the Upper Bucks County Area Vocational Technical School, and that's our official name.
what's our legal entity?
Is it illegal? I don't know.
I don't know what it
Our
is.
tax ID number, is the current wording, Upper Bucks County Technical School.
Then we can change the articles to reflect that.
Well, we can, I mean, they can just follow the legal word, I don't think we have to make a motion to change it.
Now, how is this, for example, I don't know, or some sort of, articles of incorporation, I don't know. I just know what our tax ID number says.
Yeah, we can change that too.
Can we find out? Can we find out what we need to call ourselves? That would be really good. KU works for me, but,
We may have a lot of heads turning.
let's do it. So it's a continuous improvement process, we'll just try to, if we discover these things, we'll just square them away. So we're gonna have a vote to change the articles and then send it out? Is that the correct process?
Okay, so, want to take a look at the budget?
The revenue budget from 7 and then 2.
So you're just gonna skip right over the extensions. It's fine, I know, that's the first thing all boards turn to, the revenue. So yes, if you're accepting a floor and a cap, then revenue alternative 2 on page 7 and 8 is what we're talking about. I agree, understand. So if you look at the bottom, you can see that our expenditure budget from year to year is increasing by 0.29%. Our contributions from the school districts will now be 72,000. Our increasing contributions will be 72,000, as opposed to the other alternative where it was a negative 80. So it's definitely better. And debt service is what it is. We have no control over that. The enterprise funds, adult ed, cafeteria, et cetera, are off the back. They don't, well, cafeteria is dramatically different because we furloughed 3 people and, we have half the customers we used to have. So I don't have a lot of history there, so I'm doing my best to guess what it will look like. But, and adult ed, we didn't have a budget last year, so that's also brand new, relatively speaking. The production looks just like it did last year. Capital projects is a list of capital projects that we expect to do next year. That $140,000 that we're spending, that's money that's left from the 2005 bond issue. Yes. So if once you spend the 85%, you're good. So we've just been carrying that forward and we're dabbling in it here and there, but if we do these projects, that'll use that up. But then encumbering our fund balance to bring it down to 8% unencumbered will involve putting some money away for future capital projects. So, we'll be able to replenish this money.
We have the usage fund too, right?
We haven't designed, I don't have an actual fund set up, but yes. We probably need to formalize that somewhere. Although I'm afraid to totally encumber the money because, plus, I could use it every year for, as whatever set aside to chip away at it toward the budget, so I have to figure all that out and come up with a proposal. So any questions? Can I go through this in more detail, or?
Why are we having to put an exhaust fan below the check?
This is the cap project? Yeah. We don't have to, but we want to. We want to talk about this in our facility committee meeting, but we think that while the exhaust system in welding will suffice if you choose to do nothing, there are major improvements that we could make to that system that would improve the quality of the environment, the sound, the ventilation, and energy usage.
So it was under design.
It's under design.
Well, it's in cost of design. It should be pulling the air out of the top of that room. I hope that's what you're looking at.
Well, one of the things we're looking at is a variable frequency drive for that large exhaust fan. Right now, it's either on or off. It's very loud, and no matter how many people are welding, there's nothing to shut the snorkels off, so it just pulls as much as it can pull all the time. It's very loud, and it also exhausts, I think it's roughly 5 times as much air as the makeup air can provide. So if you don't open the door, we'll suck the air out of our hallways, and that's what's happening.
Well, don't let the same outfit design the text that designed the original one.
No. What would have been nice, this would have been good if we had this option. This would have been a change order if it had happened during the project. but we've gone back to the manufacturer. Actually, Joe's done a lot of legwork on this. Gone back to the manufacturer. We've taken the worst case scenario and planned for the but it includes more than just the VFD. It includes all the integrated control work. It includes the damper system for, is that correct, Joe, for each of the snorkels? And it includes the balancing to go along with that.
And
So you got it.
what's that?
Well, we've budgeted 40,000 for it. That's the worst case scenario.
So in Quakertown, we had an exhaust put in the kitchen that was exhausting. We did the calculations, it was like 100 cubic feet heated conditioned air. And we did the math, and that particular exhaust was costing this business $45,000 a year. So, with the back of the napkin, so we, and it cost $50,000.
I can see on the BMS screen every day, those exhaust fans are running all the time. They're running.
Very good job.
So how are you gonna get more air in without opening the door?
Well, that was part of it, that we put some additional dampers.
So there's two modes to that unit. It can recirculate or it can exhaust, total exhaust. So,
In summertime, when it's totally exhausted.
and we have no option at this point other than to open the door. One door or the other, we either open the hallway door and we can smell the bakery and well.
That's not,
Yeah. Or we open the garage door, well, you know, the overhead door, I should say, not garage, the overhead door.
What's your fix for that?
Well, it would still, that wouldn't go away, we would just reduce the amount of time the overhead door is open. By slowing down the variable frequency, by slowing down the motor of the exhaust, we bring the makeup air closer to the exhaust air, which was, it's a big gap in between. We're talking
Well, yeah, it is.
8,000 CFM fresh air, makeup air, and that's 8,000 CFM.
Throttle that's engineered.
And what is it, Joe, in the exhaust, is it close to 40,000?
Yeah, we're close to, if everything is exhausting, and what happens is, at some point in time, everything is exhausting.
Well, I was in there when the door was shut, we turned on all the big, and there's an exhaust fan up top, and it couldn't get away.
Yeah.
It couldn't open up. Now, on my barn, I'm pulling almost 100, about 150,000 CFM in summertime. And I have to have windows open, 2x3s, and all the way around the building. Get enough capacity for it. You can't just throw it out, you gotta let it in.
Well, the only saving grace, and it's a small consolation, but the 8,000 CFM all passes through HEPA filters. So there's the expense of filtering the outdoor air through high efficiency filters. In addition to that, if we can slow down the amount of makeup air that we need, that air is also heating. That is the largest heat coil in the building. That is set up to heat 8,000 CFM from 0 degrees Fahrenheit to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a big coil. That's a lot of air moving across it. So anything we can do to slow down the amount of makeup air we need coming from the rooftop unit is energy saving, because that's taxing the boilers as well as the power to run fans.
The other alternative is to put some heat exchangers on the exhaust system so that it's warm in here when it's coming in.
Well, we can do that, and also, I don't know if I said this already, but that unit can recirculate. The big blue exhaust unit that you see out from the parking lot.
It's filtered too.
That is also filtered with HEPA filters. So in the wintertime, that can actually recirculate the majority of air and capture most of the particulates.
But it's on or off. So what happens is, even if you only have 2 or 3 students in a booth, that you're running that whole thing. And the noise level is high, and that's just, the efficacy of it is, that's not necessary.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the VS drive. I think that's a good idea, but I will have a problem if I go down there in the summertime, things are shut up, closed up, and there's a fog.
Yeah.
I don't wanna see a fog.
No. No, I agree 100%. I mean, that's.
Even if it's about 10 feet of the ceiling, where there's going to be that, I don't wanna see it in there,
Yeah.
so. Go to it. That's it. I guess one other question I have is contingency fund. I'd come up with 160.
No, that's what it was last year. We, 2 years ago, 3 years ago was the first year we had it. Last year, we cut supply budgets and moved the difference into that reserve fund, thinking that, well, if supply budgets have been cut too much, then we can move it back out. And that just happened to be a differential that got moved in there, that's all. So it was 160.
We're working with 100.
Oh,
Just even numbers. I like even numbers.
I do too, believe me. I twitch when I type that in, but. There it is.
This is our supply line on that.
Budgetary reserve.
The building repair and maintenance number, it's a flat year over year. We should be able to be well within that. We shouldn't need any repair.
No, we should not, but then, the other side is, we have a filter regime where we go around and change filters regularly, so those, some of those costs, that would work.
Yeah, it's not gonna be zero,
Right.
but, I mean, it's zero, it's a net zero decrease from last year.
Yeah, and it's, just so happened on it, I think this last January was my 4th anniversary year, which it seems twice that, but half that, if you know what that means.
We don't, Joe.
But so I had very little history when I got here, and then we went through 2 years of construction, so it's really hard to gauge where we were, because actually I've been in 3 different schools, the old school, the transition school, and the new school.
It would be interesting to see, how much we spend on repairs. I mean, the new building, we just put in one.
130. Well, yeah, 21 actually.
I don't want to change. And stuff's new.
Yeah.
And it's, if it breaks, it should be under warranty, and go look for somebody. If we can't find them. I have friends. Under warranty.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
So,
same with energy.
should be down, the energy should be down, the revenue should be down, and the overall operating costs of the building should be down. I'd like to see a 16 versus 17 when the time's appropriate, when everything's done. I'll take a look to see how much less hopefully
That's
building
true.
costs to run.
Yeah, that's true, it's not true, because what happens, we have areas now that are air conditioned, we didn't many of the theory rooms aren't air conditioned, now they are air conditioned. We have some more space, so in some ways, it's more efficient, but in the aggregate, it may be the same or actually more, because we've done more. But we don't have that history. Yeah.
We get the data, we get the numbers, then we can see it. Because it's a big number on a complex like this, and they're kind of fixed.
Yeah.
Go back before the windows were put in.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. If it was, that would probably be the best benchmark to see what that was then. And I think that was the year before I got here.
Seems like it was just last year, but I don't know, more than that.
Yeah, I think
I remember talking about it when I just came on, so it was just done.
it was probably like about 5 years ago. It was
Yeah.
done before I got here, but not long before I got here.
The other thing that would be interesting to look at is the long-term cost effectiveness of the chilled water system with air handlers versus DX units on the roof.
Yep.
Repair time, good roof damage, people walking across the roof all the time to get to them, refrigerator leaks, all that. You know, the complicated machines on the roof versus the relatively simple machines that are there now. Fan, coil, modulating valve, not much more than that. So it's- You're pretty confident on the salaries there?
As you know, we're in negotiations with our largest group, and who knows? So, we budgeted very conservatively. Hopefully it'll be less, but, I mean, we really only have one group nailed down, and that's ESPA, the smallest group.
5 feet?
No, there's more than 5, but it's.
We did a good job on that.
Yeah, so, you know, as always, I budget conservatively, and then hopefully we don't, we of course don't spend what we don't have to spend, so. But with teachers, you just don't know where that's going, so.
And then medical insurance, I'm trying to see a 10% increase.
Yes.
You were talking about.
Right, well, here's what happened. The proposal that I did get for this year is an increase over the actual. However, last year, we get 3 looks, you know, first, second, third look. And last year, my first look was X. By the time I got the third look, so X was the one I put in the budget and was adopted. I don't remember the number, but by the time I got the third look, it had decreased 15%. So the actual number was much less than the budgeted number. So of course, the actual number is the one I'm using to move forward, but when you look at a budget to budget, what you see is actually a decrease.
So you took the actual number and make that up by 10%.
It's like 13%, but I think it will probably be less by the time I get my third look again, but it could be more. I mean, you don't know. You know, in the old days with Blue Cross, the first look held. So even if the second or third look was higher, you were guaranteed that first look. That's not true now, because we're self-insured. So it could actually be worse. I don't think it will be.
I would say it's maybe for the first time, will not be running a deficit.
Wow. You had a tough run there for several years. Yeah, that was bad.
Self-insured.
Right. It's all gonna smooth out.
With my level of off.
Yeah. Yeah, that's only gonna get better. Pardon?
It only takes a couple people.
Absolutely. That's small. We only have 46 people, so it doesn't take much to throw us way off the track. We've been really lucky, really lucky. But being in the consortium, as we move toward pooling, et cetera, it'll smooth out, so there should not be great big changes from year to year, but we're not there yet, so.
We're in the same consortium in Quakertown.
Right. Yes.
Fantastic.
Right.
Our first pass was, we did, and I don't know what, we actually changed something.
Yeah.
Because over the long term, the risk was less over the long term versus the short term. Our costs, so our first look was up 600,000.
Yeah, the smoothing out process is painful, you know, hurts some and helps others, and in the end, we'll all be okay, but you were relatively low,
We were
so
low.
when you try to smooth things out, it hurts you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were low.
77 on the natural gas propane, tanks and the cost per foot, gallon, whatever it is.
Yeah. We have our first bill. They started February, I think officially it was February 2nd that we did the crossover. And comparison-wise, we're paying 17, at this current billing rate, we're paying 17 cents a gallon less than we would have been through.
You're not locking the prices in, or like?
It's not, well, what happens is the prices, there's a market price that's posted each month. And then what we do is just, whatever the price was, which is a publicly posted price, whatever the price was on the last business day of the month, whatever, okay, the previous month is what we get billed for the next month. Right now, so what happens is that plus 50 cents, that's it. Very simple arithmetic. Very easy to figure it out. And I think right now, I think it's like 134. That's something, I mean, that can go up or down, but the delta always stays the same.
We don't have a lock-in option. This was our first bid, and right. But the value is looking at bidding propane, so we'll see where that goes. I know.
They're still bringing in the whole.
It's a different truck, yeah, and what happens now is, when Crest was doing it, they would just come out several times a week and check the truck, you know, top it off. Pennridge, who's our current supplier, put remote monitoring. So what happens is when the level drops down to a set point, I think it went to 25% or something like that, it sends them an email. And that triggers them to come out. I guess it's working, we only have one delivery.
What's the capacity now,
Well, for the main building, it's 4,000 gallons. For the maintenance, it's 1,000 gallons, and for the greenhouse, it's 1,000 gallons. If we wanted to, there's a problem if you have too many tanks in one area, because it becomes a tank farm, and then we get into a whole thing of regulation. What we could do is put a second tank in over near the greenhouse, next to that tank, and then run a line over. That would be, we could use that as emergency overflow. Because worst case scenario, if we couldn't get fuel oil or whatever the problem was, and we had to go to propane, you could abandon the greenhouses and use that 2,000 gallons as supply for the rest of the building. There's a lot of different scenarios. We've talked about it peripherally, but we haven't actually come up with a design or a plan yet. But if you wanted to, I can look into that.
I think the reason I ask is that you could get a better price if you got a trailer instead of a single axle.
Well, we have right now, what it happens, doesn't make a difference how they bring it. It's the 50 cents. It's the 50 cents. However they want to do it.
Well, that's what I said. If somebody can bring you in the trailer lot instead of driving the individual truck, how much would be 45 cents or 30 cents?
Well, maybe at some point down the road, we want to talk about prorating some tanks. I mean, it could be a few years from now. You know, there's some advantages.
How much do we use? We do that analysis, because we also used as a big, converting a bigger tank.
So this would be the first winter that the oil-fired boilers and the gas boilers are kind of working as they're supposed to. The downside of that, it's such a mild winter, so the data we get is going to be skewed.
Oh, you can keep track of it. You could normalize that.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Give you an idea what degree days.
Does anybody have any questions?
Okay.
Just looking at the big changes. I mean, it's impressive. $167,000 for software, now it's $67,000.
Well, I was, yeah, that was a big change.
Well, there was, last year, the intention was to buy new student services software this year, which we did, but we didn't know, that could easily be a six-figure price, so that's what we budgeted. Turns out, we went to Power School, and it was pretty much the same. There may have been a one-time fee, I don't remember, but from year to year, it's practically the same cost as what we were using. So we didn't need that $100,000, so I mean.
What you're saying is you'll make up for it next year.
Absolutely. Absolutely, because Joe wants that tractor, he keeps saying. So.
Also one for
No, hopefully we won't have too many of those, but, the software really needed to be replaced, so.
Well, if there are more questions, in our finance committee meeting, we can, we'll take a break and cancel, and then we're ready to the
Be back at
7:30, yes. All right, folks, well, we're going to open up our executive session.
Yeah, please.